What would happen if, on a deserted island, there was only one young woman and 31 sailors? What sides of human nature would come to light in such a situation? Today, we'll explore this through the story of the island of Anatahan. But first, don't forget to hit the like button. And now, let's dive in. As always, let's start from the beginning. At the center of today's story is a small island called Anatahan. It's part of the Mariana Islands, located in the Pacific Ocean. The island is volcanic in origin, and from time to time, its volcanoes still erupt. Its size is modest, about 9 kilometers long and only 3 kilometers wide. Once, the island was home to the Chamorro people, but in 1668, the Spanish discovered it, relocated the locals to other islands, and left Anatahan uninhabited. In 1899, Spain sold the island to Germany, which soon set up a coconut plantation there. In 1914, Japan occupied the Mariana Islands. They continued growing coconuts, and around 40 local islanders worked permanently on Anatahan. And now we come to the main story. Our central character is a young girl named Kazuko Higa. She moved to Anatahan when she was just 16. At that time, Japan was actively expanding its territories and encouraged people to relocate with promises of benefits. At first, Kazu's brother took her to the neighboring island of Saipan. But soon, she moved again, this time to Anatahan. There, she met 18-year-old Soichi Higa, who was in charge of looking after the coconut plantations. The two quickly married and, for a while, lived happily on the island. In 1939, a government official named Masami Kuzukabe arrived. He became the overseer of the plantations and Soichi and Kazu's superior. It seemed clear that Masami was fond of the girl, but he never dared to openly break up her marriage. Meanwhile, World War II was in full swing. When the United States entered the war, Japan's quiet days were over. American fighter planes soon targeted Anatahan and began bombing the island. Kazu and the plantation overseer hid in the forest during the raids. But her husband, Soichi Higa, disappeared after one of the attacks. The accounts differ. Some say he escaped by boat to visit his sister on another island and never returned. Another version claims he was killed in the bombings. And there's even a darker version that Masami, who was secretly in love with Kazu, used the chaos to get rid of his rival. After the American airstrikes destroyed the coconut plantation, all the workers left the island. But Kazu and Masami chose to stay. For a Japanese official, abandoning his assigned post was considered a disgrace. Food supplies for the workers had also been destroyed. So Masami and Kazu were forced to rely on 40 pigs and 20 chickens that had miraculously survived the bombing. After her husband's disappearance, Kazu began living with the plantation overseer. By the end of the war, Japan was losing rapidly and coconuts were no longer a priority. Supply shipments to Anatahan stopped, leaving Kazu and Masami as true castaways. They gathered whatever remained after the raids, hunted, fished, and tried to grow crops. But the island's constant dampness quickly ruined their clothes, and soon they were forced to cover themselves with leaves and handmade fabrics from plants. This Robinson Crusoe lifestyle lasted until 1944. In June of that year, the American Navy sent 15 aircraft carriers to the Mariana Islands. Patrol planes spotted a Japanese convoy sailing from Tanapa back to the mainland. The battle turned into an easy victory. In just 3 days, the Americans destroyed the torpedo boat Atori, the anti-submarine net layer Koku Maru, the transports Batavia Maru, Hinko Maru, and 9 more cargo ships. Around 300 sailors managed to survive. They are often described as soldiers, but that's an exaggeration. In reality, only 10 of them were actual servicemen, and the highest rank among them was just a sergeant. The rest were simply crew members of merchant vessels. It didn't take them long to find Kazu and Masami. At first, both sides lived peacefully, sharing fish, fruit, and the meat of wild animals. Before long, they even managed to brew a crude kind of coconut wine. At first, the groups lived separately, but gradually they merged into one community. Like this, they survived for almost a year. Everyone assumed that Kazu was the wife of the plantation manager, and this arrangement seemed natural. But soon American ships began to appear on the horizon, and the Japanese realized that a landing was inevitable. They abandoned their settlement and retreated deeper into the island, hiding in the thick jungle. Life in the new conditions was far harsher. Within a year, their clothing had worn out, food was in short supply, and they barely had any tools left to work with. 33 people were now trapped in the heart of a wild island, forced to stay hidden at all times, as American troops frequently landed and searched the area. Their supplies dwindled quickly, and with that, tensions inside the group began to rise. On January 3, 1945, fate dealt them another blow. An American bomber clipped the side of a volcano at the island's center and crashed into the jungle. The entire crew perished. Later that spring, on May 10th, units of the U.S. Army's 2nd Infantry Regiment conducted a reconnaissance mission on Anatahan. Once again, the Japanese slipped deeper into the forest and managed to remain undetected. Meanwhile, the war finally came to an end. In February 1946, a U.S. Army search team visited the island, dropping leaflets announcing Japan's surrender. Under a white flag, they left a box filled with newspapers and magazines to deliver the message. That fall, in early September, Kazu and her companion climbed up to the smoking crater of the island's central volcano. There, they stumbled upon the wreckage of an American B-29 bomber. From the parachutes, they stitched makeshift nylon clothing, and from the strong parachute cords, they created durable threads for daily use. The men didn't just scavenge the wreckage, they dismantled it piece by piece. Aluminum plates were hammered into knives, spears, cooking tools, and even razors. Machine gun springs were reshaped into fishing hooks, and engine bolts were turned into chisels and other cutting tools. Using clear plexiglass and strips of rubber, they crafted homemade diving goggles. And with wire, they even managed to assemble primitive musical instruments, simple 3-string devices that could still play melodies. But the most valuable prize wasn't the tools or the utensils. It was the discovery of 2 Thompson submachine guns. They ended up in the hands of 2 of Kazu's admirers, and that instantly changed the balance of power. The men used their weapons to intimidate the others and forced Kazu to serve their every demand. Kazuko Higa remained the only woman on the entire island. It's no surprise that the men quickly began showing interest in her. When it became clear that she and Masami were not legally married, one of the sailors suggested making their union official. The idea was simple. If she became his wife, the others would finally leave her alone. And so, Kazuko and Masami held a formal wedding. But that step didn't solve anything. Everyone knew she had been involved with other men, and in such a small, all-male community, that only fueled jealousy and conflict. Peace didn't last long. Kazuko's second husband soon disappeared. According to one version, Masami was shot by a sailor named Jinsaburo Yoshino, who wanted to claim the woman for himself. But what Yoshino didn't know was that Kazuko was already secretly involved with another man, Mario Thibault. It was Thibault who stabbed Yoshino to death, unwilling to share her. From that moment, the island turned into a battlefield. Dead men were discovered from time to time, all of them victims of fights over the Queen of Anatahan. Hoping to end the chaos, the captain of a cargo ship named Ishida married Kazuko. But not long after the wedding, his body was found floating in the water, his death shrouded in mystery. What followed was a grim cycle of marriages and killings. Each new husband ended up dead, consumed by jealousy and violence. In the end, 11 men were killed. The last of them suffered 13 stab wounds, proof of a brutal fight to the death. By July 1950, only 19 men were left alive on the island. At last, they realized the source of all their conflicts was Kazuko herself. They decided to eliminate her. But one of her lovers warned her in time, and Kazuko escaped into the jungle. She hid there for 33 days before spotting a passing American ship. She managed to signal for help, and the Americans rescued her. That was when the outside world first learned that Japanese sailors were still hiding on the island, refusing to believe that the war had ended 6 years earlier. Afterward, the Americans began dropping supplies under a white flag, letters from family, Japanese newspapers, food, cigarettes, even beer. But the sailors remained convinced it was a trap. For another full year, they stayed hidden in the jungle, now without their queen. Only when one of them recognized his wife's handwriting in a letter did the men finally accept the truth. The war was truly over. One by one, they emerged from hiding, surrendered to the Americans, and boarded the ship that carried them back to Japan. Kazuko Higa's name would forever be remembered as the Queen of Anatahan. To some, she was a femme fatale who destroyed the lives of dozens of men. To others, she was simply a victim of impossible circumstances. Later, Kazuko remarried, but tragedy followed her again. Her new husband died shortly afterward. Her story inspired several books, and in 1953, director Joseph von Sternberg turned it into a feature film titled Anatahan. When the Japanese sailors finally left Anatahan, a small group of settlers from the northern Mariana Islands moved to its western shore. They lived there until 1990, when a powerful earthquake and a series of volcanic eruptions forced their evacuation. Later, from 2003 to 2008, volcanic activity returned, and since then, Anatahan has once again remained uninhabited. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to support the channel. Hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next incredible and mysterious stories from the past. Your support helps me bring even more of these tales to life.